This is Hannes Grossmann from Obscura, and you're listening to Metal Wani.
Mr. Hannes Grossmann, how's the day going on so far?
The day? Oh, well. Very relaxed. Not so much going on.
It's weekend, so any
Exactly.
plans, jamming, or let's say trying to practice?
In practicing, in terms of practicing, well, the point is I have to practice to keep up with some of my abilities. Because all these things, if you don't like practice, or I would rather call it maybe rehearsal, well, because I'm maybe going more through the stuff that most of the time that I already mastered at a certain point, but try to stay at the same level and make things like more solid and experience what I can do. Like I rarely practice like completely new techniques. I mean, there's so many things you can practice.
True.
And the thing is, I try to experience and evolve like different areas of my playing, but it's never like I go down and say, hey, I never learned traditional grip.
Right.
Maybe I should practice traditional grip. I don't do that. Or I, stuff like that, like very basic things, or learning a new technique in a sense of, approach to the drum. Rarely, like that's stuff I experience rather than when I meet with other drummers, and then it comes into my playing automatically. What I practice, well, there's one thing, it sounds strange, but what I actually in the last couple of months kind of worked on was double bass drumming. Just because, I could play like the note values before.
Okay.
But when I had a clinic tour in Italy last September, and I met a drummer called David Folchito.
Okay.
And he showed me his approach, which was completely different from mine, in terms of how you sit and how you balance the pedal and stuff. Like he used a lot of rebound, and actually I tried a method from him, like he untied the spring of the kick drum pedal, so the pedal was completely loose, like no whatever, it didn't work anymore. Right. And then he said like, now you have to try to play, like just maybe not playing in time, but try to get the beater to the head. Right. And that's very difficult. But the same motion I do for trying to catch the rebound without springs. It's the same motion that I do when I catch the rebound with the springs on. So that was something I kind of got through. I would say so. Like that was a new thing, like not in terms of note values, but I always had like I experienced that my double bass playing had to rely a lot of my there you have better days and worse days, these things vary, and this was a lot with double bass drumming, because some days where I was like could go really fast and super easy. Then I had a hard time like keeping up the other day, and I thought like, this can only be because I'm not fully aware of my technique, and I wasn't, and I didn't realize, and I think that I have closed like this hole in my practice schedule or in my playing level, like that just that I had for years. I just felt it, like that I had. It's not the same with my hands and my feet. Like I always felt my hands were way better and more reliable than my feet. Like not talking about like double strokes and paradiddles. Of course, I can play that. I can still play more stuff with my hands than with my feet. But like in terms of single strokes, I always thought like, okay, hands are super solid. Feet are solid, but but it depends. Like some things work better the other day, and I think I have closed that gap. Like now I can play like tighter and with more stamina and more power and more precision than I could before. And and also it feels much more comfortable, like changing this kind of technique. And this was like the only occasion in the last few years where I actually changed something dramatically, such as a very distinct playing technique.
Right.
I usually don't practice that stuff a lot.
Okay.
I only go through, but then in terms of patterns, like certain patterns, I practice mostly the stuff that is in my book, Extreme Metal Drumming.
Yeah.
That's something I regularly practice because I need it for the music I play.
True.
Others than that, what I do a lot is, and I always did, is making backing tracks, composing backing tracks, which don't have a musical purpose so much. It's just like a bass line or something, and then I spice it up with some other instruments, and I try to play to it. And this is more what I practice, and what I do is like more of timing practice. I shut off the metronome and just try to play to the backing track and try to get in a laid back groove, and then I try to get on the grid and stuff like that, like really super tight things.
Nice.
That's and really I want to tighten up my playing as I'm already able to play certain fills and stuff. I want to make them sound better and always improve in that sense. And bring me to the drum set and say like, hey, I have to learn like this polymetric whatever, like 5/9/7. I only do that if I need it for a song or for a specific musical purpose, and never practice it just because for doing it, like maybe Thomas Lang would do it. I don't see it that way. I always see like, okay, is this something I need for a specific song? Then I am gonna practice it. That's what brought me to the death metal drumming in the first place, because I was hooked up with a Necrophagist and wanted to play in the band, and that's why I practiced this kind of stuff. If I had never met the guys, I would have never
I understand.
Gone to that style, I would say.
Right, and those guys still make us wait, to release an album, man, isn't it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's true. So, how would Hannes Grossmann describe his drum sound?
I don't know, because my drum sound, I would say like it's very hard to catch my drum sound, since it always changes a little and develops into certain things more than others, and you're always searching for. I think like this is another thing maybe that I'm getting more towards my own signature drum sound, how I imagine it, and it's always getting closer to my perfect image, but I think I never reach my perfect image. But it always depends on the music I play. Like Blotted Science sounds differently than Obscura, also in like terms of tuning and stuff.
Yep.
And it's always different. I would say like my signature drum sound is as you can hear me play live, and that sounds, I would say, maybe energetic.
Okay.
Like that's something I actually would like to hear if somebody's like commenting on my drumming, like that it sounds energetic and powerful, because
annihilating.
I don't know if you will. Yeah, why not? I mean, it would be certainly a compliment for me. I mean, if you go to Steve Gadd and say, "Hey, your drumming sounds annihilating," I think he would rather be offended. But or any of these guys. But to me, it would be a total compliment, because I like it a lot. Like this kind of playing, it should be wild at a certain wild, but furious, and at the same time controlled.
Yep.
And the sound itself, I hope it has it should display like a lot of attack and power, and a lot of body, if you will, like in terms of the tone and stuff like that. What I want to go away from is this typical triggered heavy metal standard sound. I don't like it.
Okay.
And not so much. It depends on the music. It always goes with guitars and stuff. But I think you can make it more balanced. Like use the modern tools and still try to make it sound like a completely live played instrument. But this is also things with my technique. maybe play a little harder than some other drummers, and that's why microphones catch up more of the attack and more of the volume, and so I can mix it in more easily and rarely need any kind of triggers or something like that. And but however you want to go for your drum sound, I would say like my drum sound should sound like
Hannes Grossmann.
Yeah.
Right? There we got it. That's cool. And now, the Radial Covenant is your solo album, which comprises of tunes which is, even closer to 40 minutes, if I'm not wrong. So this is probably the first solo albums which I think, is by a metal drummer which has vocals in it.
Yes.
It's been kind of I've been listening to many albums which drummers come out with, but it's purely instrumental. So you have had this idea of using vocals as well, and I'm sure you didn't want or you don't want this album to sound like Obscura. So how's the entire process?
It's very hard to comment on it, how it actually sounds, because I might have a different view on it than a more objective listener who have not produced the album. So it's always different to see it, but I mean, I have to admit that it fairly sounds quite a bit like Obscura.
Okay.
In the first place, like, the reason I wrote it was like I like instrumental albums, and I thought about like doing like this instrumental thing, like album that has a very different kind of drumming, like more fusion style drumming. But then I think like, okay, why I'm actually which are the songs, which are my strengths, like, and I hope that one of the strengths I have is writing metal songs and writing songs at all. It doesn't matter which style, and I don't know. It to me felt more like something I would buy or I would listen to. I mean, I like instrumental fusion albums, but I rarely buy them, and I wanted to put something out that that if somebody else had produced or written, I would be totally. I would be totally buying. Like I would say, like, oh, I love this record. This is always what drives me as a writer. I want to hear. I want to write stuff that I would like to hear.
Right.
Because I'm writing songs not in like picturing your favorite bands and try to get similar. I never do that. I only see my record collection and see like, I want to hear to a certain style of music, but actually it's not in there. Then I have to write it myself.
Right.
Like when I'm in the mood for death metal, or let's put it this way, then I'm listening to certain bands and I say like, somehow something is missing here. I would now like to hear like some more melodies, or maybe some more groovy drums or whatever. Right. But still, I want to hear like a solid song, and they say like, okay, I want to have the hook line, but I still want to have like this kind of progressive rock thing into it, but there is no such band, And so I thought like, okay, then I have to write it myself.
Right.
And of course I always like write stuff for Obscura as well, but I had some songs in line, or actually some song ideas, which I didn't finish for the last album, and some of them were tuned down to C. Okay. And this brings some other problems that are not doable with Obscura and stuff. Like, just, I mean, it sounds stupid, like, then you can just say, then tune your guitar differently, what's the point?
Right.
But it doesn't sound the same.
True.
And these are the small things that I thought like, okay, now I think I have to come up with something myself, like a solo record. This is like a solo record. Now I have like, and then it adds up, and I have 45 minutes of music where I had pictured vocal lines, like really vocal lines, and not speaking about lyrics in a certain way, but I had already a picture in my head what the album should be about, and lyrically in which direction it should go. If I put this on the table in my band and say like, hey, I have 45 minutes, which is pretty much a complete album. Here you go. But please make it this and this topic. Right. I mean, that would be awkward. Then I can just go out and say, okay, why not write my own name on it? If the only thing I now need to do is like record it and
in your own style,
find
you
somebody
have the freedom.
who's singing.
Right, you have the freedom to do anything,
That's the point. I don't have to compromise anything, because I thought like, I think I'm way beyond that point where I want to have any compromises anymore. And that's not a good basis to make a band record.
True.
And so I thought like, okay, now this has to be a solo record.
Right.
And here it is. Like
that's cool. Now in this album you have Jeff Loomis, we have Ron Jazombek, and so many other musicians. So, of course, they are like probably the legends when it comes to their guitar playing skills. So how difficult was it for you to make sure, all of them get enough space to show off their skills?
Actually, that was very easy. I didn't know who's gonna play guitar in the first place when I was writing the songs, but I always leave room for guitar solos because I like them. I mean, I play guitar myself, but not nearly as good as I want to. And I always admired like all these guitar players, and I had, I'm very lucky to play with some of my favorite guitarists, and I played with great guitarists, my whole life so far.
Right.
And that's where I picked up a lot on that instrument, in terms of writing what you need to make a backing track for a great solo. And at least that's something I did. And then I thought like, this backing track goes in this stylistically in a certain direction. Who could play on this? Right. Oh, I know. This guy. He would be perfect for it. Like that Jeff Loomis solo, I wrote this riff and I thought like, okay, this should be an outro. You could play a solo. The riff sounds a little bit like Nevermore. There you go. And the point is always like a second thing was for me to find somebody not only guesting on my album because he has a certain name, that doesn't do it for me. Like I wanted to have some kind of connection with the people. Like Ron is playing with me in Blotted Science. Chris plays with me in Obscura. I also know like Per Nilsson, and we've played on the same album, like on Christian Münzner's solo record.
Right.
And I know Jeff Loomis. Where did I meet him? Actually, I met him twice. Like I think at Hellfest, and we talked and so on, and he's good friends with Alex Webster from Blotted Science.
Blotted Science, right.
And so there's always a connection, and the other guys I know as well. Like personally, I had something either musically we do or did something together, or we hung out or something. Like I knew where the guys are, and I thought like, oh yeah, I would love to have these wonderful people on my record.
Right.
Like and that's mainly.
That's how your plan was.
I've met so many guitarists. Like I could make another solo record with another completely different people, which would be amazing as well. Like I think I can say it because I don't play the solos myself. I think they turned out great. I mean, I'm totally blown away. Like every solo on the record is like, oh, okay, because I mean, these guys are well known in the scene, and I mean, you definitely know why, because they're outstanding, each of them. And and I'm lucky enough to have them on one album, so you could rather say this is a very guitar-oriented album, because it's a lot of guitars in there and a lot of guitar solos, and it's totally guitar-driven, but it's the music I like, and like mainly I like to hear, to listen to, and so. This was logical.
So it's basically your ideas. You put your ideas on paper, and with these musicians like Jeff and Ron. So it's more like the combination of what you actually wanted the end result to be, and that's how it is.
Exactly. I think like well, it depends. Yeah, who you let solo over your stuff. But it's the same thing. Like Chris of Obscura, his style I know very well because we make music together since 10 years now. And when I write a song, and I thought, oh, here I could put in a solo section here. Then I write something out, and I thought like, okay, this is nice. I can perfectly see him do something that is his own signature, but I don't know exactly what it is. But you will be happy with it, and will write an amazing solo on top of it. That's for sure. And that's the thing. Like if you have, it's the same like a director in a movie who works with good actors. You have to give these actors some kind of freedom to do their thing, to play out their strength. And it's the same with good musicians. Like the bass is played by Linus from Obscura as well, and like I wrote out some bass lines because I need to know where the basic root notes are going and which tones we're listening to. But I mean, whatever changes he had in mind or said, like, hey, I have inserted like some fretless stuff here, and I said, like, yeah, do whatever you want. It's fine. It will sound good in the end. And it did. There was not one single. I don't know if there was. No, I don't think there was like any section, not a tone we needed to change for the bass. He just turned them in, and we said, yeah, that's it.
Nice.
No need to change anything. It's perfect. And that's the thing. Like you have to know the people you play with, and know how they sound.
True.
And how they could solo over something like this. Or like the solo Ron Charsenbeck solos over. This is like something that is maybe a little similar to what some of his own work
solo album
goes into anyway. So I thought, like, okay, this could be perfect for him. Like, that's how it came together. You always need to know good musicians and let them play out their strengths. That's it.
That's perfect. Now, right from the beginning of your career, I'm sure you would have kept targets in your mind which you have to achieve. So that kind of gives an example of how a musician should try to make it easy by keeping the targets, because that's how I keep I've been learning drums from last few years, so I keep certain targets. So of course you would have had something like that from the last so many years. So tell us something about it. What kept you going right from the beginning?
That's a very good question, but I have no answer to it. It's like targets. Yeah, I mean, I'm a rather chaotic person in that sense. Maybe not as much as I think, because if I was, then there would be no outcome. There certainly is an outcome. I have released a DVD on my own and a record on my own, played in some bands and stuff. So I can't be that chaotic, but maybe let's put it this way: I don't make so many plans. It's more like a thing, like a constant evolution or constant development that I want to go into something. And it's mainly like the people I make music with. Like when I started out, I just wanted to learn or stuff that drives me in a certain specific time. When I started to learn the drums, it was like, I was 10 years old. It was just like, yeah, this is fun. This is awesome. Right. It's something I remember, like, this is awesome. This is the best thing ever. And then I was listening to music like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, and I wanted to play like that, play some songs, be able to play something like that. Now, when I've reached that goal, then you see like, okay, what's next? Of course. And then there's some other music that drives you forward. But I have never had career plans, because where I come from, it's like, I don't know, it's a different mentality. It's not like, maybe it's a very American thing to say, like, I love this is gonna be my life. That's not what you think. In Germany, it's more like, yeah, I really, really enjoy it. But if you really enjoy it, can it be work? No, it can't. And then it's also like, yeah, but making a career out of it, that's not very likely. Is it possible? I don't know. Better work in a bank and make it in your free time and stuff like that. Right. And I always was thinking that way. And then, it slightly turned out to, get better and better. And I thought, like, maybe I could give it a try. Like, let's say if in the next few years, if all my endeavors are going up and it's getting better at some point, and I can establish somehow and can make a living of it, then maybe I should try to go for it. Like, if there's like, I mean, if I had seen like after 2 or 3 years, like, there's no way this is ever working out. Right. But when you see a progression, then you say like, okay, maybe it is working out. So why shouldn't it work out? Other people open up bakery stores and it works out. Why should work this out? And that's in terms of career, like, and then there's always projects like it's always like the people I played with, they motivated me to do something like like when I was very young when I joined Necrophagist, and the first thing was like I want to join the band, but to be able to join the band I have to be able to play the music, and so I learned the music.
Right.
Then we went on tour, and then I don't know, I didn't really enjoy the time so much as I thought I would. And I said like, no, I have to move somewhere else.
Right.
And it was a wise decision retrospectively, because nothing is going on with the band. At that time nobody could imagine that, but somehow I knew it. Like it was always like, it was always weird in that sense.
Right.
I don't want to go into that so much, because it's it's not so interesting for me anymore.
Right.
But it's more like I always felt it's a good move to, quit the band.
Okay.
And it was actually retrospectively maybe the best move I have done.
Right.
So
because
and sometimes that's the thing. Sometimes you have to make decisions like just like that, just radically, and think like, what do you want to do?
Right.
Like, what and. This was a good decision.
Was it true that on the Epitaph album, your drum lines were already planned by Muhammad?
Yeah.
So
yes.
Was it something like, generally, I don't know whether, if I'm wrong, please correct me. When you came into the studio, was it like, okay, Hannes, we have the parts ready, so you will have to replicate them, or was it like, okay, we have the parts here, you can have a look at them and you can add your touch to it the way you want? So how was it?
It was more towards the first option, I would say.
Okay.
More tending towards that, because time was very short, and I thought and the thing is like, I always thought like, I listened to the songs, and the songs were like composed on Guitar Pro, and I had no clue like what it's gonna sound like when it comes out, because it's not real guitars and stuff, and I just listened to the tones and how they interact with the drum line, and I thought like, at this point I'm not getting everything, I'm not quite understanding everything. Like, what's the purpose of this fill? What's the purpose of
that?
This thing? And I have to say, looking back at it, you could have made a better drum line than it. I know that a lot of people will hate to hear it, but
that's
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are great drum lines on it.
Yes.
Like especially I think because a guitarist wrote it, because he thinks differently. He does not think in the box.
Yep.
And that's why in the end it sounded great, and it sounded fresh and new. But I think like more like you say, taking them as a basis for working out something else could be even better. Could have been even better. I think it would have been even better. But I mean, it is what it is, and it is brilliant writing, I think. Like, and this was like my main thing. I thought like, okay, but overall, this is a brilliant composition. I don't think I should change it, because after all, it's the view of a composer, and maybe it needs another composer to understand this kind of approach, because most drummers see it from the drummer perspective. They say like, no, dude, I want to play my own lines, and they don't pay attention, like, because they think like in the box. They think like, I have to play this fill, and when somebody else says like, no, don't play a fill there, but I spent 1 hour, working out this fill, it does not matter. The only thing that matters is what the composer wants to express.
Right.
It's the picture. That's the only thing that matters in music, and it should be as awesome as it can get. Now, if you want to show off your skills, I mean, that's the second thing. I was young and wanted to show off my skills, but I had the feeling that there's a lot in these compositions that I cannot play yet, and that I have to master first, and that's also something challenging and interesting. And I think, this was also a good decision to really accept it, and then at a later point quit the band and explore my own stuff. But that's the thing, like, and it was more like, if there was more time, if we had like a year or something to plan and record the album, then I could have added my own style, my own ideas, and more of them. Like, there were some minor changes I did, and I said like, no, we better don't do that. Like, usually there was like in the drum lines, under every tom fill there was like the same value of double bass drumming underneath, like unison of toms and double bass. And this sounds like dumb. I mean, no offense, but this sounds like running wild dump, you know,
Right.
like just a little faster. And I said, like, I don't think it's a good idea. It's much harder to play in the first place than just playing the fills, and you will bury the tom sound and
Yes.
actually will make it less dynamic. And this is not a good idea to do. And then I just didn't record it. It was in the notes, and I said, no, I'm not playing that. And that was the first thing, and this was also a right decision to do. But overall, it's really not my drum lines, and I don't want to take credit for them, because I don't have any credit for them. I only get the credit. And you could argue if that's not even the bigger thing to learn it note by note and learn something note by note written by somebody else. That's always hard.
That's true. Well,
It is what it is.
You as a drummer, did you ever try to define more of who you are as a drummer? Let's say you head to a studio to record an album with, let's say, Obscura or your own solo stuff. So do you look at record as a next step, or probably explore more of you as a drummer rather than the same vision?
Both.
Okay.
It's always both. With my own stuff, it's always both. It's always getting a step further at some level. That doesn't mean that I have to always play faster or always play more, or but doing something differently I haven't done before, also in terms of composition. Never do an album twice.
Okay.
And never do the same album twice. That's the point. Because the second time will be worse, just because it's done already. That's what I think. That's my foundation of everything I do. And then I also like to explore, like, when I record, what's possible. Of course. That's a completely different thing. Like, it's possible to explore, like, to work out my drumming, but when I hear it, like, in a recorded form, I can really tell if this is good or if this isn't working out.
Yeah.
And these are the things, and I always try to get more fresh. Like, I could give some examples, like on Cosmogenesis, the process was more like we jammed together, and I went to the studio like 2 days recording and just did one takes, because I wanted to do and spontaneous takes as well. I worked out some things, and I just didn't work out so much. I just heard the songs and, was singing the lines in my head and played something. And I wanted to go for the take that sounds best spontaneously played. Because I wanted to do the opposite of what I was doing with Necrophagist, which was very how do you say, limited. So I wanted to have a completely different approach. And on Omnivium it was differently again. I thought, like, maybe the music it's much more hectical. I want to rather downsize it a little and play fills only when they are needed and stuff like that. And with Blotted Science it was very, very different, because these songs were like composed to movie scenes. And so I had to capture with my drumming like the action in the film. And this is a completely different approach, and this gives you not so much freedom, but it's something else to be creative with.
Right.
And that was also planned note by note as well. This is a very similar approach to Necrophagist, but I wrote the drum lines myself. But this was like note by note, but more like to a movie, like putting something on top that isn't restrictive. But in the end, I wanted to have still a good song. Like, this is a very difficult balance. So every output I do, I think what's best for the song, and that should be played. Never view it from your own instrument's perspective. Always see it from the perspective of the producer or the drummer or the songwriter or producer, or both. And then you will create the best result. I think. But I always like to play a lot, so, and there's no restrictions in that terms in this kind of music, so that's why I think it's perfect music for me, because I can play fast forward stuff as much as I want. Nobody will complain about it. That won't be possible in a, let's say, pop or funk band. Still like that style of playing once in a while. I enjoy it a lot too, because it has different things that are important, and I love the groove. I like groove drummers. Like there's a lot of drummers that only listen to drummers. I never do that. The only drummers I listen to are more like the fusion guys.
Okay.
I never really listen to a lot of metal drummers, like just for the drums. I always want to hear the guitars and stuff. And
wonderful.
Whatever. It's definitely both.
How does it feel to play on a 5-piece drum kit which has just single pedal?
So, yeah, the double pedal is something I like.
You ever tried it before? I mean, you've been playing with double.
Yeah, I tried it. I have. In the end, it doesn't matter so much because it can be way more creative than what I come up if I have a good day. Like,
yeah.
And when you have restrictions and you play something to a new kit, let's say it's a snare drum, one single kick drum, hi-hat, ride cymbal, and 2 toms.
Yeah.
And that's it. No crash.
Okay.
Just one tom and one floor tom. Let's say like a very basic standard set. I can still come up with cool stuff. Because I have to use, I'm restricted, and restriction or restrictions are a good frame set for improvisation always. Because you have to be creative with just these things, and that's what creativity to me means. Like not using everything, because you can't do everything. There's everything you can do. Like you play a 1 hour drum solo, which will not be interesting. Like no, try to be creative with a few things,
yes.
and explore it from there, and it will be much easier to follow you than having like 40 toms and 15 kick drums. I don't know, maybe it really depends. But I can totally play just as interesting on a single kick,
a single basic kit.
I absolutely. I think so. I could play on the same level. I still like the double bass drumming. It gives some flashy things. It adds some flashy stuff. Definitely. And I would always choose for a double pedal, even if I really didn't need it that much. But sometimes it's just nice. And I've seen once I've seen at a concert of Bob Dylan, and what was the drummer? Jim Keltner, very famous studio guy from Nashville, and he used a double pedal. Sometimes even in song outros of Bob Dylan songs. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I would say I said yeah, right on.
A cool touch, isn't it?
So if he's doing it, everybody should do it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now you mentioned a point that if you re-record an album, it's going to be worse. So I don't know. Have you heard of the classic Exodus album, Bonded by Blood?
Yes, I know the album.
And they re-recorded it in 2007.
Okay.
So did you find any difference?
I don't know. I haven't heard the new.
It's the same.
Not so interesting to me. Like a new version. I think that's the point. Like there's nothing wrong with re-recording it from. It depends. Like when you say oh, we have an album that we just don't like the sound at all. Like that's a decision by the band or by the composer, which has been made because they're not satisfied with their work, and they always have this thing since 1987, this album, good songs, but it sounds so shitty.
Right.
And if you then can, fulfill this dream and say no, we're putting it out to people, to the young kids, and say this is how it should have sounded. This is really a kick-ass thing. Then I think it's totally fine. I was really surprised by the Human album by Death. It was remixed.
Yes.
I think it's awesome. I think the remix version is better than the original. I think so, because you can finally hear Steve's bass and everything, and it still has more or less the same sound. It's very similar, and the feel is the same. And this is the point. If you re-record it, I don't know, maybe remix it and make it more modern, and all these remastered versions.
Right.
Remaster version of old Rush records are amazing, I think, because they have the clear crystal masterings, the punchy master sound of today's,
technology is
productions, but it's still has the same feel than it had back in the days. And the point is, to me, that's the thing. If you re-record an album, I don't know. I know some albums which I like, where I thought maybe they should think about a re-recording, but if you have a classic album and re-record it, then it is no classic album anymore, because then there's no reason to re-record it. If you don't think it, it's always, if it's not timeless. If it's timeless, it doesn't need to be re-recorded.
Yeah.
And this on the same page, it means that okay, if you really think you need to re-record it, then it is no timeless album. Yes. Then it's outdated. And do you really want to make your album appear outdated? I don't know. If it is, I don't know. It's there's no general thing like in music anyways. There's never like a rule says like this is how things need to be done, or So it maybe could have been a good idea. I've never heard the album, so I cannot comment on it. I know other albums which have been re-recorded. I think like the Testament stuff turned out pretty nicely.
You mean the new one?
No, some of the stuff they re-recorded, like I think it was 10 years ago or something.
It was a compilation CD.
Yes, it was and this is like also a thing, like it was a best of, but they re-recorded their stuff as a best of album. This is like a good thing. Tori Amos did the same thing, like with acoustic versions and an orchestra, like making a best of her songs. And I think this is always a good idea. Like if you say I'm like a best of or like a best of live album, this is also a good idea. But really to pick out one single album, what if Slayer re-recorded Rain and Blood? I mean,
that would be that's not that.
I mean, it's a perfect album. Why re-record it? And if Exodus don't think that way about Bonded at Blood, I don't know.
Rather than your general setup with a number of cymbals and crashes and different things, what do you think about incorporating unusual sounds like bombshells, propellers into the drum set?
I never really considered it. It's what I was going into. I always try to find a small bell that actually sounds good. But it's not in the character of a bell to sound the way I picture it. And the only sound that comes close is like this Gavin Harrison little bell tree thing. But it's Siljan, so
how would that sound in a
if you had it produced by Meinl, it would maybe sound better. I have to say that.
How would it
anyway,
be?
No, but I really like the sound of Meinl. It's better in every aspect. But that's the thing I try to experiment with their bells and tape it and maybe get a shorter sound. And I like to experiment with more of their splash cymbals, like very small, and some of the stacked cymbals, because they can sound very nice, especially like the Bisense series. It sounds very, I don't know, it's a very thin cymbal and it sounds
neat,
very sharp, but also has a good sound to me. It doesn't sound so harsh, and this is like some of the sound I expect. But anything beyond that, I don't know. There's no really need for it in my sound.
It sounds a little bit weird to have a bombshell and a technical death metal song, isn't it?
Yeah, it would. I think if it comes out naturally, fine.
All right.
But I think in most cases it would sound forced. Like if there's like a song and I'm sitting in the studio and say like, oh, this needs a bell tree.
Okay.
It totally does. But if not, then I don't incorporate it. Wonderful. Like I have a set of octobands which I use for sometimes like drum clinics and solo stuff. And I have to say like to add just another sound that I cannot use in death metal so much. And just play something else. Like also, I mean, clinics are always a little bit about displaying technical ability, so I can display like this finger control technique on an octoband very nicely. Right. So, but actually, I don't really need it musically, and I don't consider doing it in a band context.
Okay.
And it's also the thing with a second snare. I think like I don't know.
A snare drum is your favorite, isn't it?
My snare drum is my favorite snare drum sound. If I have a second snare drum, it will be either sound very, very much alike, then there's no point of doing it, or it will sound completely differently, and that's a sound I don't like so much anymore, So no need for me to have a second snare drum. I don't need it. I get so many different sounds of one. I can get out many sounds from one
snare drum.
I mean, if you have like a piccolo 12-inch snare with a wooden rim, then maybe it makes sense, and it would make more sense to a guy like Jojo Mayer who plays like this jungle thing.
A lot of things, right?
And I think he can like perfectly work with 3 or 4 snares, no problem.
Right.
I think he could like make an interesting
Grew out of
drum performance out of only snare drums,
right?
Like 5 snare drums.
Yeah, that's cool.
But that's not how I see my drumming, and I'm not considering any of these sounds.
That's true. That's really cool. Now, talking about what's happening these days, things have changed very much. These days, musicians are quitting the bands they once formed due to financial issues. So, there are very few who are managing both the band as well as a day job. So, how does Hannes Grossmann manage everything?
At this point, I'm managing. I do a lot of things. I put out a DVD, which I produced myself and sold on my own online and still sell on my own online store. I now put out the CD. I'm out with my band playing stuff. I played with Blotted Science. I get percentage from the sales there. I do
Obscura
live shows with Obscura. I do some drum clinics, and I do a lot of session work. And very rarely, but sometimes I do drum lessons.
Okay.
And
so you don't have a day job.
Adds up. No, I don't.
Okay.
This all adds up to make a living of it, and it's getting slightly better and better.
Oh, that's great.
And I want to do more of the session work and record more for bands in all kinds of styles. I want to get into that because I think this is what I like playing music for people, with people.
That's nice.
Record songs, and with the internet, it's so easy. I'm working at the moment with a guy from Pakistan.
Wow.
And he's got like a very Sonic-esque approach. Or I would describe the music. I mean, it's hard to describe if it's more a mellow thing, like
progressive,
some fusionish pop drumming. I would say it reminds me a little bit of Jeff Buckley. Once in a while, but goes a little bit into the direction of Cynic.
Okay.
And this is a very interesting thing to record to, and that's something I like. And then I'm currently did just a song to try out if it works for a technical death metal band, which it's more the direction Spawn of Possession, like completely crazy and fast. Okay. And this is like the complete opposite, and this is like a very nice work, and that's what I try to focus more and more on. And I have several other projects in the works. Got a new band in the works.
I think Blotted Science album is also under,
It's all also on the radar.
Yeah, because Ron was telling recently.
Exactly, yes. With Blotted Science we want to do another album, and actually we're doing it in this year. Will come out this year, I hope, hopefully. I think it should be finished.
Cool,
this year somehow, and that's at least what I'm expecting. And so a lot of stuff in the work. I mean, I have to say it's not super well paid job. I mean, I studied economics at the university, and if I worked in a regular day job, I would earn more money at this point. But I would surely not be able to make all these things, all these projects. Surely there was no solo record.
Okay.
And
is there a plan of Obscura as well?
Which one? Like, we want to put out a new album and record it, like produce it maybe if we can make it fast enough in the first half of 2014, like record it, produce it. I don't know, something like that. But it has to happen now because
jam-packed 2014.
Yes. I don't know. With a record label, it always takes a little more time. Until it's finally released. But I want to, put it out as quickly as possible.
Wonderful.
And as possible means by not compromising with the quality.
Okay, that's really nice. So, when does Hannes Grossmann plan to come to India for a clinic?
Yeah.
for a clinic or with Obscura.
To play a clinic or several clinics in India. If you know people like who can hook me up. I mean, clinic. This is also the thing. Maybe I should add from your last question. Like, it's getting harder to make a living. Yeah. Like harder, and for me not, because I can. The internet made a lot of things possible.
It's easier, right?
It made easier to get in touch with people. I don't have to rely on a record company or anything like that. I just go out and people contact me. I record stuff for them and I can sell directly. I don't need a store. I don't know how it would have been like years ago when that was not possible. But on the other hand, I have to say a lot of people quit because with their model, it's not working. And it's not possible to say then change your model, change your business model. This is not possible. Yes. I mean, a guy like Kerry King, he's not a studio guitar player. He can only do Slayer.
Right.
And if that's not working out because a lot of people steal his music, I have to make it a little more undifferentiated. Like,
right.
Let's make it a little more simple. Here, I know it's not so simple, but that's like the bottom line of it. If he cannot go in the studio and say like Steve Lukather and say like, oh, if my band Toto doesn't sell albums anymore, then we just disband and I go make studio jobs in Los Angeles.
Right.
That's not gonna work out. I mean, Kerry King maybe doesn't have to worry because he's a rather well-known guy, but a band slightly smaller that had good income so far and were relying on the development, then certainly like they don't sell anything anymore and their record company goes down and what are they going to do? Like,
right.
If they were like if this whole touring, and because it also plays in the touring, when you don't make money with selling albums, then you go out on tour and everybody's doing it, which brings the prices, the guarantees for everybody down. And same thing you see in drum clinics. There's not so many drum clinics anymore.
Yep, and that's true.
A company like mine cannot spend so much money on every artist anymore. It's not possible. Then then you always go for a certain time with the big hats because they always sell.
Right.
And so, but what about the musicians that have to balance this kind of this struggle from day job and other things? Like, I don't know, and like it can be a chance, but only for people like me who are able to play several styles, who are able to do whatsoever, who are able to read music, who have proper mixing skills, who can communicate and all these things. And I think there's a lot of talented people out there who don't have I actually know some people who are extremely talented, but they don't get their talent out so easily because there's too much. They don't know the people who can, and there's some also, like you said, the internet. There's so much choice. There's bands popping up like constantly in the style. Daily. Like when we put out Epitaph, it was like the only album that sounded like this.
Yes.
Now it's like 10 years later, it's every second tech death band sounds like it, and this is like the thing. It's easier to produce your music. It's easier to get it out, and it's a lot less special in a way. And it's an endless circle. I don't say like then you cannot, because a real metal fan cannot spend so much money to buy everything. Right. So and that's like part of this vicious circle. But of course, you have to find your own niche in the end. But taking back to your questions, clinics are getting like more difficult to do because people are not going out so much anymore. They know it from YouTube, so they don't go out anymore. And that's the point. I still prefer live. Seeing somebody live is extremely different. There's no even the best live video on YouTube or on a DVD cannot display what it is, the feeling of a real good live concert. It never can.
Yes, that's true. I have a point here. Yes. We had just 2 drum clinics here in India.
Where are you living?
We've had one I live in Bangalore.
Okay.
And we have had one clinic of George Colliers and the other clinic of Virgil Donati.
Awesome.
So 2 clinics, one in Mumbai and one in Bangalore. That's it.
Okay.
No more clinics. So,
I would totally be down for doing clinics in India. Like, if that somehow worked out, like one call, one email, I would be in, you know?
Right.
We've never been there, and we get a lot of messages from India. Hey, Obscura should play in India.
Yes,
and we had like also getting some offers, but they always came to a bad timing, like when we had other stuff to do, unfortunately. But there will be the time when we play in India. I'm pretty sure about this. I would love to do drum clinics in India, of course.
That's wonderful.
Of course I would. I don't know who's in charge there, and who.
No, generally we have Pearl. They get the artists. So
Pearl. I'm not with Pearl, so.
That's the question. So
I'm with Tama, so.
Tama, right?
And I like
anyhow
the sound a lot, so.
It's always about the sound, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, this is a very different model, like clinics. It's a different model. It's more like people bring drummers or musicians into their music stores, right, or drum schools in order to. It's more like an advertisement thing.
Yeah.
But when you play live concerts, the live concert is the only purpose. So you're paying money to get in, and in clinics, it's more like mostly like. You pay very little money, or it's even for free, and people say like, "Hey, come to my store. There's this drummer playing," and then people buy stuff in the store, and there's a different reason, and so it's always kind of commercial thing, whereas concerts are not, and that's the point. If clinic worked like concerts, you had promoters who were setting up the clinic, and more like a concert or more like a workshop, just for doing it, because it's their business model to make money with concerts, so they extend it to bringing just a drummer, and
right.
I don't know if that's working out, but if it was like that, there would be more drum clinics, I think. But if it's always going through drum companies who pick out, like, it's very difficult.
Yeah,
and
selected artists,
and I consider myself already like a selected artist. Like, considering how Miles supports me, I cannot complain,
Yeah,
and that's the point. And so I have to say, I don't know. I could rather see it as like a concert substitute.
Yeah,
like
I kind
drum
of feel
clinics
that.
or something like that. It's more like. It has the purpose of playing the drums. Drummers go there because they want to not buy a new ride cymbal attachment. They want to go there.
It's more like a coaching session.
Yeah, it's more like, yes. And it's more like a concert in the end, or more like a concert with a workshop.
And a concert where a drummer goes out with the knowledge to some extent.
Exactly. And yeah, I would. That's one of the things I love doing. I think that's amazing thing to do.
Wonderful.
And if ever somebody wants to hook me up for a drum festival in India, give me a call. I'm there.
Yeah, no problem.
If conditions are alright, then I'll be there for sure.
Well, that's about it. Cool. I mean, it was more like the dramatic journey of Hannes Grossmann from last 1 hour. So thank you so much, Hannes.
Sure.
You've been awesome.
Thank you for the interview. It was really nice. Actually, good questions, by the way. I really enjoyed the questions because they weren't so standard.
Appreciate your support. And